Hello, and welcome to Explorer Classroom. My name is Jennifer Bergen, and on behalf of National Geographic Education, I am so happy to see all of you here today and welcome you to another Explorer Classroom. National Geographic believes in the power of exploration and wonder to change the world. And here at Explorer Classroom, we love to connect with the heart of our National Geographic community, which is our explorers. This includes those who are working on the front lines of conservation, storytelling, research, and exploration. Today we have a special presentation geared towards pre-K through second grade learners. However, curious people of all ages will be delighted to learn from today's featured explorer for a mini lesson and time to ask your questions. I would like to introduce Dalal Hanna. Dalal is a freshwater ecologist, which means that she explores and does research on rivers. This includes looking at animals and plants that live near the water and give her information on how healthy the water is. Dalal also loves to share her work with children like you, and she takes them exploring by canoe in the boreal forest. Dalal, before I turn it over to you, I just want to say that today we have people from all over the United States and the world who are ready to hear from you. We have got people from Georgia, Texas, Virginia, California, Idaho, Pennsylvania, and more states. We also have people coming in today from Canada, India, Australia. They are so excited to hear from you. So go ahead, take it away.
Hi, everyone. I'm very happy to be here with you today. I'm going to share some pictures with you as we get started. Okay, so my name is Dalal, and today I want to take you on an adventure through the boreal forest. But what exactly is the boreal forest? Well, this is a map of the entire Earth, and the part that is green is the boreal forest. And this little red star at the top of the map is the North Pole. The boreal forest is an ecosystem that's south of that goes all the way around the entire Earth. And if you zoom in on any one of the green sections of this map, you'll end up in a place that looks like this, the beautiful and majestic boreal forest. And as someone who grew up in the country Canada, where a large part of the boreal forest is, I have loved playing in the boreal forest since I was your age. Here's the proof. This is a picture of me catching a fish from a lake in the boreal forest when I was about 6 years old. And today I continue to spend a lot of time in the boreal forest. Here I'm in a canoe with my friend Ellery. And I love to go canoeing in the rivers and lakes of boreal forest. But I also spend a lot of time there for my work. I'm a scientist that does research on the boreal forest. This is a picture of me at work. I'm standing in a stream in the boreal forest with a special net that I use to catch the cute little insects that live in the bottom of streams. And this is where our adventure through the boreal forest begins. So, if you take a special net like this one and you put it into the water of a stream, you may find tiny little insects hiding under the rocks, the leaves, and in the mud. And let me tell you, there are a lot of these insects in the streams of the boreal forest. And they are pretty cute. So, check this one out. It's amazing. Just like us, it has 2 eyes. Can you spot its 2 eyes? I'll give you a second to try and find them. They're right over here on its head. It's got 2 black eyes. Now, although we can see this cute insect quite well in this picture, it's actually very small. And it's so small that to see it, you need to use a microscope. A microscope is a special tool that you can see me using in this picture. It's a tool that you use to make things appear bigger than they are. And when I look into a microscope, one of my favorite things to look at are insects like these. This one is the larva of a mayfly. And last year, while I was in the Boreal Forest on the traditional territory of Edmonton, Erlen, and Martin Falls First Nations, I got to see something very, very, very special happening to these little mayfly larvae. They were transforming from this larval stage into their flying stage. Check it out. Here are a bunch of mayflies emerging from the water and flying around in slow motion. Now, even if these insects are pretty small, they are the favorite food of many different fish. And there are lots of really cool species of fish in the fresh waters of the Boreal Forest. Take, for example, sturgeon. There are a number of sturgeon populations living in the freshwaters of Canada's Boreal Forest. And they're usually about 3 meters long. But how long is that exactly? Well, I have a challenge for you to try and figure it out. Stand up. Yeah, all the way up. I can't see all of you, but maybe some of you are getting up. And now try walking the distance that it would take for you to get from one end of a car all the way to the other end of a car. That's about 3 meters long. It's pretty big, and these fish can actually get that big. Another amazing thing about sturgeon is that they can live for over 100 years. That's older than most humans live. But to me, the coolest thing about sturgeon is that they existed at the same time as dinosaurs. This is one of the species that has been around our planet for the longest time. Now, this is a picture of a river in the Boreal Forest that I visited last year. And many different species of fish, like sturgeon, can live in these rivers and swim around in them. But what if we get out from under the water? What will we find? Well, one of the first types of species we'll encounter on a river and on lake banks are frogs. This is a Boreal chorus frog. And I have a pretty soft spot in my heart for frogs because one of the first research projects that I ever worked on as a scientist was with frogs in the Boreal Forest. I was recording frogs while they sang to see if the noise that cars makes affects their ability to talk with one another. And for this research, I had to get really close to frogs with a microphone. A microphone is a special tool that you can use to make sounds louder and to record them. And I remember being totally shocked the first time I saw a frog do this. What you're seeing in this video is the frog's vocal sac. And the males of many different species of frogs have these to help make their mating calls louder. Now, let's step off the edge of the Boreal's freshwaters ecosystems where frogs like to hang out and go right into the forest. There are lots of beautiful trees in the Boreal Forest. And there are also several different kinds of trees in the Boreal Forest. In fact, there are 20 different species of trees found across the Boreal. And these trees are really important because they help keep the weather around the world stable. Now, you might be wondering, how do trees help keep the weather stable? Well, I don't know if you ever heard about this thing called climate change. That's when the weather changes and is different to what we usually expect it to be. And these trees, like trees all around the world, actually absorb an element called carbon that really affects our global climate. And there are so many of these trees in the Boreal Forest that we need them to help keep the climate and weather stable around the world. Now, what if we were to look down on the floor of the Boreal Forest? Well, let me tell you, there are lots of cool plants there. This is one of my personal favorite plants from the Boreal Forest. Does anybody know what this plant is? Some people do. Well, it's a pitcher plant. And what fascinates me about these plants is that they eat insects. But how? Well, let's think about this. What would you do if you wanted to eat an insect? I See some people making actions. Personally, I would probably try running after it and catching it with my hands like this. But these plants don't have hands. They can't get up and move around looking for insects. Instead, what happens is that the insects slip down into these bowls here that you see, these kind of like pitcher-like structures. And then an acid liquid at the bottom of the bowls turns the insects into a liquid, which allows the plant to suck them up and eat them. Delicious. There are a ton of other very incredible plants in the boreal forest. And some of the plants that I'm personally really interested in are the ones that can be used to eat or make teas. So I want to spend a bit of time now telling you about some of my favorite edible plants from the boreal forest. One of the great classics of the boreal forest are blueberries. Can those of you who have tasted or heard of blueberries before raise their hands? I see some people that have tried blueberries. Well, in the boreal forest, blueberries ripen during the month of August. They grow out in nature, and they are truly delicious. And what is so great about blueberries in the boreal forest is that when you find a patch of them, there can be a lot of them. I have a special story that will give you an idea of just how many blueberries there can be in the boreal forest. I was once on a long canoeing expedition with a dog. And this dog and I had been together for many weeks. And so the dog had watched my friends and I pick blueberries many times. And then one day, I was standing there quietly picking blueberries, and I noticed that the dog was eating them too, straight off the blueberry bushes. Can you imagine what the dog looked like? It was just going up to each blueberry bush and kind of using its jaw like this, eating them right off the blueberry bushes. Perhaps that gives you an idea of just how many blueberries there can be in the boreal forest. The dwarf red raspberry is another plant that we find in the boreal forest that I love. Like me, black bears love eating these little berries. You may have seen raspberries before. We grow them a lot in agricultural contexts, but they also grow out in the boreal forest naturally. Okay, the last plant I want to tell you about today is my personal favorite edible plant of the boreal forest, the creeping snowberry. In French, this plant is called the petit thé des bois, which means the little tea of the woods. And it has this name because you can infuse the leaves on the plants you see here to make one of my favorite teas. The other edible part of this plant are these little white berries that you see here. And these berries usually ripen during the month of August. And one of the reasons why I love them is because they have a very unique and delicious flavor. They taste like wintergreen. Here's a picture or a little video of me collecting some of these creeping snowberries. They're so good. But like with any other edible, you really need to know what they are before you try eating them, because some edibles in the boreal forest are dangerous. And in fact, the creeping snowberry, if you eat too many of them, your lips may start to feel a little bit numb because they have a substance in them that's used to make different medicines like aspirin. Now, what if we look up from the ground of the boreal forest toward the sky? What do you think we might see? Any ideas? Well, if we were lucky, we might see a bird. There are 300 species of birds in the boreal forest. Some of the ones I like most are owls. The owl you see here is a boreal owl. And like all other owls, their eyes are actually very different to ours because they can't move their eyes around like we can without turning their heads. So you can get an idea of what that feels like if you try looking, let's say that way. Normally, I would just take my eyes and sort of shift them that way. But an owl can't do that. So an owl has to look that way and turn its eyes with its head. Why don't you try it at home to see what it feels like? Difficult, eh? Well, thankfully, the owls have adapted this amazing ability to turn their heads all the way around so that even if they can't move their eyes in their sockets, they can still see all around them. And that's why owls have this very special ability to turn their heads around like you see the owl doing in this video. There are also 85 different species of mammals that live in the boreal forest. And one really special one is the wolverine that you see jumping out of this box. These mythical small animals are about the size of an average dog, but they are really strong. And one particularity of wolverines that always struck me is that they've been known to eat the teeth and bones of other animals. I actually don't know of any other species in the world that does that. Wolverines also have a really amazing sense of smell. They can smell other hibernating animals under the snow, and they'll dig these long burrows through the snow to reach them. The last animal of the boreal forest that I want to tell you about today is the caribou. This majestic animal is unfortunately rapidly disappearing. And science shows us that this is mainly because they're losing their homes. Why are they losing their homes? Well, some humans have decided to build stuff on top of their homes. And this is making it very hard for the caribou to survive. That's why it's really important to share the beautiful planet Earth with all the incredible creatures that live on it, so that they can continue to survive alongside us humans. But what can we do to make sure that we're properly sharing? Well, this is where my challenge for you comes in. One of the first steps to sharing the Earth with the creatures that live on it is to better understand them. And to understand, we need to observe with our eyes and listen with our ears. So when we're finished here today, I invite you to get outside and start observing. Make drawings of what you see. Take notes. Try looking at the same part of the world again and again to see if you observe any change. For example, you could see if the plant that you find in the sidewalk crack outside your house changes between now and the end of the summer. By observing, we can learn about other species, what they need to be healthy, and how we can best share with them. And as a scientist, I do this kind of observational work all the time. And one of the main ways I do this work is through the charity that I co-founded that's called Riparian, that works to connect youth and science on the water. I started this organization with my dear friends, Andrea and Michaela, that you see here. And with our organization, we take young people like you on expeditions to learn about freshwaters and do research. We do things like learn about fish and collect tissue samples from them. We collect insects that live in rivers and learn to use microscopes to identify them and learn about what they tell us about the water. We also use underwater cameras to explore and document the underwater world. I'm the person standing at the back of this picture with that big weird white thing in my hand. And that thing is actually a camera that we're about to send underwater to document the fish and vegetation that live there. And here I'm standing with a young woman named Aurora, navigating the underwater camera from far away. So now that I've told you all about the boreal forest, I would love to learn all about where you live. So please get out, make some observations, and share them with me. How can you share them? Well, if you like, you can ask your parents or guardians for help to send me a message on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook. This is my handle, and you can reach me there anytime. Thank you all so much for taking this journey through the boreal forest with me. And if you want to get more adventure after we're done together today, you can go check out the National Geographic Family Guide for today's Explorer Classroom. You can find this on the website. And there you'll find a link to a virtual reality series in which I take people on a 3-dimension adventure through the boreal forest. Now I think that it's time for questions.
Well, Dalal, we're almost out of time. We're going to take one more question from a family on YouTube. We have got a question from Evie in Montreal, and she would like to know, what's your favorite animal in the water?
Ooh, there are so many beautiful animals in the water. That's a tough one to answer. But I think one of my favorites would be the loon. I really love the loons. They're a type of bird that lives in the water, and they make a beautiful, beautiful song. And when you're lucky enough to see a loon or a couple of loons together on the water, swimming around the water, and then diving down into the water and coming back up to the surface and following them, and then I try and make these, let's see if I can do it. I often try and call them like that, and that makes them get closer, and it's a really fun interaction on the water.
Well, everyone, I hope that you feel as inspired by Dalal's presentation as I do. Dalal, thank you so much for being a role model for young learners and for sharing all of this information with us today.
Thank you all for coming.
Oh, yes. And, thank you to all of the learners who are not on screen with us that joined us through YouTube. Thank you to the families who have been on screen with us. I bet that all of you want to explore more, and I can see that there are so many more questions coming in from YouTube. So if you've got questions and you want to learn more, here's a couple of ways that you can do that. You can visit natgeoed.org/Explorer Classroom. You can check out our schedule. You can register for more live shows, and maybe you and your family can have an on-screen spot. Next week, we're going to come back with another broadcast just for your age group. We're going to be with ethnobotanist Maria Fadiman, and I hope that you can check out other ways to get involved with all the description links we have below. Now, if you would like to know more specifically from Dalal, I know personally she is amazing at responding to people on Twitter. You can follow her on Twitter or Instagram. Her handle is @Dalal_LEL_Hannah. And make sure that you also tag Nat Geo Education and use the hashtag Explorer Classroom, so that way more people can join in the conversation. Of course, subscribe to our channel here to get updates about all of our videos.